Where will the Antichrist come from? Imagine this. A world leader rises to power, promising peace and unity. Crowds cheer, nations bow, and for a moment, it feels like humanity has found its savior. But what if this leader is not who they claim to be? What if they're the Antichrist? The question that has puzzled theologians, scholars, and even everyday believers for centuries is, where will the Antichrist come from? Today, we're diving deep into this biblical mystery, exploring prophecy, history, and clues hidden in plain sight. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Before we figure out where the Antichrist will come from, we need to understand who the Antichrist is. The Bible describes this figure as a deceiver, a false Messiah who will oppose God and lead many astray. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3-4. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped. So, we know the Antichrist will rise to power, perform signs and wonders, and deceive the masses. But where does this figure come from? Is it Europe? The Middle East? Maybe even closer to home? Many Bible scholars point to the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation for clues. In Daniel 7, the prophet has a vision of 4 beasts representing kingdoms. The 4th beast, described as terrifying and powerful, is often linked to the Roman Empire. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one. This little horn is often interpreted as the Antichrist, rising from the remnants of the Roman Empire. Does this mean the Antichrist will come from Europe? Possibly from one of the nations that were once part of the Roman Empire? Some say yes, but others believe the story doesn't end there. Now, let's turn our attention to a view that has captivated theologians for centuries. Could the Antichrist come from the Middle East? After all, the Bible often points to this region as a focal point of prophecy. From the Garden of Eden to the Tower of Babel, and from Babylon to Jerusalem, the Middle East has been at the center of God's story. Take a look at this. The Bible tells us that major events in human history have unfolded in this region. It's no wonder many believe the Antichrist could emerge from here. But let's dig deeper. Why is this theory so compelling? In Daniel 11, verse 37-38, the Bible describes the Antichrist as someone who will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors. Many scholars interpret this to mean that he will come from a region with deep religious roots, possibly a place where monotheistic faiths like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have intersected. And don't forget Babylon, the city that has long symbolized rebellion against God. Revelation 17 and 18 speak of Babylon the Great as a hub of wickedness and deception. Could the Antichrist rise from a place with such a storied and rebellious past? Then there's Jerusalem, a city sacred to 3 major religions. Zechariah 14 verse 2 warns of a time when nations will gather against Jerusalem. And in 2 Thessalonians, the Antichrist is described as someone who will set himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. This prophecy raises an intriguing question. Could the Antichrist come from a place where he has access to the Temple Mount? Some believe this points directly to Jerusalem or its surrounding areas as the Antichrist's origin. Another clue lies in the promise of peace. Daniel speaks of a leader who will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, a prophetic symbol of 7 years. This peace deal, many believe, will center around Israel and its neighbors. Imagine a charismatic leader stepping onto the world stage, offering solutions to centuries-old conflicts. He promises peace in the Middle East, ending hostilities between Israel and its neighbors. Sounds amazing, right? But here's the catch. This peace is temporary, and his true intentions are anything but noble. Throughout history, leaders have risen from the Middle East with grand ambitions, from Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon to Alexander the Great, who marched through this region. The Antichrist could very well follow in their footsteps, using charisma, power, and deception to unite people under his rule. It sounds like a dream come true, but it's actually a nightmare in disguise. So, could the Antichrist come from the Middle East? The evidence is compelling. From the symbolic significance of Babylon to the prophecies surrounding Jerusalem, this region remains a key player in the unfolding story of the end times. But remember, the Antichrist won't just come from a geographic location. He'll rise from the hearts and minds of those seeking power, control, and rebellion against God. That's why staying grounded in Scripture is more important than ever. And yet, there's still more to uncover. Could the Antichrist emerge from somewhere even more surprising? Now, let's turn our attention to Europe, a region rich in history, power, and prophecy. Could the Antichrist rise from the heart of the Western world? Some believe the evidence points directly here. And trust me, what we're about to uncover will leave you thinking twice about world politics. First, let's look at a key prophecy in Daniel 2. Remember Nebuchadnezzar's dream? The giant statue with a head of gold, chest of silver, belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of iron mixed with clay. Scholars widely agree that the legs represent the Roman Empire, which ruled much of Europe. But here's the twist. The feet, made of iron mixed with clay, symbolize a fractured yet enduring system, possibly pointing to modern Europe. Many believe the European Union is the modern embodiment of the Roman Empire. Think about it. A coalition of nations striving for unity, but constantly facing division. It's iron mixed with clay, strong in some ways, weak in others. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Daniel 7, verse 24 speaks of 10 kings who will arise from this kingdom. Could these represent a future coalition of nations within Europe, paving the way for the Antichrist to seize control? Europe has a long history of producing powerful, charismatic leaders. Think of figures like Napoleon. These were men who captivated entire nations with their words and ambitions. Could the Antichrist follow this pattern, rising from Europe as a figure of unity and peace? Imagine this. A leader emerges from Europe, promising to solve the world's biggest problems: climate change, poverty, war. At first, he seems like a savior, but behind the scenes, his real agenda is unfolding, a quest for absolute power. Here's another clue. Europe is an economic giant. The euro is one of the world's most traded currencies, and the European Union wields immense political and economic influence. Revelation 13 warns of a time when the Antichrist will control global commerce, requiring everyone to accept his mark to buy or sell. Could Europe's powerful economy play a role in this end times scenario? With Europe at the forefront of technology and digital currency, the infrastructure for such control is already being laid. It's not hard to imagine a future where one leader leverages these systems for ultimate control. And we can't talk about Europe without mentioning its religious significance. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about attacking any specific faith. But could a future Antichrist manipulate religious institutions in Europe to gain global influence? It's a chilling possibility. Europe, with its cultural, political, and economic power, provides the perfect stage for such deception. Europe's history, its economic and political influence, and its central role in prophecy make it a compelling candidate for the Antichrist's origin. But here's the sobering reality. The Antichrist won't announce his plans outright. His rise will be subtle, calculated, and deceptive. So, could he come from Europe? Or is there another region we haven't considered yet? Stick around because the answer might surprise you. One thing is clear, the Antichrist will be a master of deception. Think about it. How easy would it be for someone to use technology, media, and global platforms to control the narrative? It's not just about where the Antichrist comes from, but how he gains influence. With wars, rumors of wars, and global unrest, many are asking, are we living in the final era? Could the Antichrist already be among us, preparing to rise? You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. While it's tempting to speculate, Jesus reminded us not to be afraid. Instead, we should stay vigilant, rooted in God's Word, and ready to discern truth from lies. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, we read this: "While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully." Now let's pause for a second. This isn't just any horn. It's a symbol of power, intelligence, and arrogance. Many scholars believe this little horn represents the Antichrist, the ultimate figure of rebellion against God. But what makes this horn so dangerous? And how can we recognize it when it appears? Let's dig deeper. Daniel's prophecy isn't just symbolic, it's incredibly detailed, giving us specific traits that help us identify this mysterious figure when the time comes. Here's what we know. First, the little horn uproots 3 kings. The first thing we learn is that the little horn rises to power by uprooting 3 other kings. Daniel 7:8 says, "There before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it." This imagery isn't just poetic, it's prophetic. It shows the little horn's ruthlessness and political cunning. To rise, it destroys or overthrows 3 leaders. This could mean literal leaders or nations, but either way, it's a violent takeover. Think about it. We've seen dictators and political figures throughout history who've risen by removing rivals. Could the little horn be a future version of this pattern? And here's the real question. Are we already seeing alliances and rivalries forming that could lead to this kind of upheaval? As we speak, the world is full of unstable alliances, shaky treaties, and power struggles. It's not hard to imagine how this prophecy could unfold. Second, the little horn speaks boastfully. The second characteristic of the little horn is its mouth. That's right. This figure is known for speaking boastfully. Daniel 7:8 describes it as a horn that had eyes like the eyes of a human being and a mouth that spoke boastfully. But here's the kicker. This isn't just arrogance. This is blasphemy. Daniel 7:25 adds, "He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and the laws." The little horn doesn't just boast about itself, it mocks God, His authority, and His people. Sound familiar? Throughout history, we've seen leaders who exalt themselves as gods, or try to rewrite morality to fit their agendas. And in today's world, it seems like every day brings a new voice trying to silence God's truth. Could this be a foreshadowing of the little horn's rise? Third, the little horn persecutes God's people. This trait is one of the most chilling. The little horn will actively persecute God's people. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25 tells us, "He will oppress his holy people and try to change the set times and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time." Here's what that means. The little horn won't just oppress believers politically, he'll wage spiritual and physical war against them. This persecution is part of a larger end times tribulation, and it's a direct attack on anyone who refuses to bow to his authority. Think about it. How often do we hear about Christians facing ridicule, censorship, or even violence for their faith? It's happening now, and the Bible tells us it will only increase. The little horn's rise will bring persecution on a global scale. Also, the little horn tries to change times and laws. This characteristic is fascinating and a bit eerie. The little horn will attempt to change the set times and laws. What does that mean? It could refer to a complete rewriting of societal norms, morality, or even religious traditions. For example, throughout history, we've seen leaders and governments try to erase Christian holidays, change worship practices, or redefine moral laws. The little horn will take this to an extreme level, seeking to dismantle everything that reflects God's authority. And here's the kicker. He'll likely justify it as progress. In a world that values convenience over conviction, it's easy to imagine people accepting these changes without question. We also see that the little horn's rule is limited. But here's the most important detail. The little horn's power is temporary. Daniel 7:25 says his rule will last for a time, times, and half a time. Scholars interpret this as 3.5 years, a short but intense period of domination. This shows us two things. First, God is in control. The little horn might rise, but he can only go as far as God allows. Second, it reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's hope. God's people won't be forgotten, and justice will prevail. Each of these characteristics paints a chilling picture of the little horn and the Antichrist it represents. From its boastful words to its ruthless persecution, this figure is the ultimate embodiment of rebellion against God. But here's the thing. The Bible doesn't just give us these traits to scare us. It gives them to prepare us. The more we understand these characteristics, the more we can recognize the signs of the times and stand firm in our faith. Because while the little horn's rise is inevitable, so is its fall. Here's where it starts to get real. When we look at the world around us, it's hard not to see the shadows of Daniel's prophecy taking shape. Political leaders are rising with unchecked power. Nations are forming alliances that seem fragile, yet oddly aligned. And everywhere we turn, the world is searching for someone to bring order out of chaos. Could this be the stage being set for the little horn to emerge? And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 crowns, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been fatally wounded, and his fatal wound was healed. And the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. The beast is a person who takes the evil offer that Jesus turned down, but he's also anti-Christian in another way. His rise to power will be slow and unnoticed at first. Even those who are close to him won't see it coming. He will come from the ordinary people. According to John, in the Bible, the sea represents the general mass of humanity, or more specifically, the non-Jewish nations. Many people wonder how one man will be able to control everyone in the world. Here we see that he is given a lot of power. He can make war against the saints and defeat them. He seems to come from a mix of political leaders and catches the world's attention by miraculously recovering from a serious injury, probably from an assassination attempt. His arrogant and blasphemous actions will be shown for 42 months. In Greek, anti means against or instead of, and Christos means Christ. So, the Antichrist is someone or something that is against Christ or tries to take his place. A second beast causes people to receive the mark of the beast. Just like the kings from ancient times, the Antichrist king will be accompanied by a prophet known as the second beast, often referred to as the false prophet. This religious leader will have special powers and will use them to compel people to worship the Antichrist. He will deceive people by performing miracles, such as making fire come down from the sky and causing statues of the leader to speak. In appearance, he will resemble a young sheep with 2 horns. Revelation 13:11-20-15. Then I saw another beast rising up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence when the 2 are together. And he makes the earth, and those who inhabit it, worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, awe-inspiring acts, even making fire fall from the sky to the earth, right before people's eyes. And he deceives those unconverted ones who inhabit the earth into believing him because of the signs which he is given by Satan to perform in the presence of the first beast, telling those who inhabit the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded fatally by the sword and has come back to life. And he is given power to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast will even appear to speak, and cause those who do not bow down and worship the image of the beast to be put to death. This false prophet causes the world to take the mark of the beast, which shows that this event is connected to religion. And he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. And he decrees that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. In the future, everyone who lives under the rule of the beast and his partner will be required to have a special mark. This mark will be necessary for buying or selling anything, so people without it won't be able to engage in trade. Only those who have a specific number marked on their hand or forehead will be able to conduct business. This number will be assigned to those who conform to the beast's false worship. Having a mark to buy or sell isn't far-fetched and could be very practical. Today, we already have the technology to provide people with a mark that enables them to buy and sell in a digital world. There are several ways this could occur, and ongoing programs and studies are continuously exploring these possibilities. The number of the beast. Revelation 13:18. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666, a number that suggests humans fall just short of perfection, represented by the number 7. This number is thought to be a clue to the identity of the last evil ruler prior to Jesus ruling for 1,000 years. It's interesting to note that 666 is the total of all Roman numerals except one. The Antichrist is described as a man who will stand out among his brothers. He will be incredibly appealing to people due to his charm, way with words, and looks. The Apostle John adds to what Daniel said about the Antichrist by stating that everyone will have to worship him. The Antichrist will start as a local leader, then become a powerful global leader, ruling harshly over the world, and eventually he will be seen as a god. When he appears, people will eagerly rush to him and do whatever he asks. He will unite the nations. Daniel predicts that the next world leader will be known for their eloquence, attracting the world's attention and administration. Who will worship the Antichrist? All who dwell on the earth will worship him. According to Daniel 7:25, the Antichrist is described as a cult leader. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High. The language used suggests that he will try to elevate himself to the level of God and make declarations from there. He will accept the worship of the people of the world. Is the mark of the beast here today? The mark of the beast in Revelation 13 is often thought to be a fancy new tattoo or part of some rich person's plan. However, the Bible is clear about what the mark is and when it will occur. First, there is a specific time for the mark. The Bible tells us that the mark of the beast will appear at a certain time and place in history, but we have not yet reached that time or place. The mark is referred to as the mark of the beast, because it is associated with a figure known as the beast. The mark will not manifest until the Antichrist has assumed control over the entire world. Since the Bible states that the beast and his mark will not be present on earth until halfway through the 7-year tribulation, the mark cannot exist before that time. The mark of the beast mentioned in the Bible does not appear until the middle of the 7-year tribulation, when the Antichrist is in charge of the world. Until then, any mention of the mark is a warning of what is to come. If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand. Because of this, we can see that there is a clear connection between worshiping the beast and his image and getting the mark on your forehead or hand. The mark won't be handed out by accident or without reason. There will be a definite link between worshiping the beast and getting the mark. Even though getting the mark might seem harmless to people living on earth, they might think it's just a simple way of showing loyalty to the Antichrist and his rule. In the early days of Christianity, saying Caesar is Lord was seen by ancient pagans as just a normal civic duty. We read, "He himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation." People who worship the Antichrist will have to drink the wine that comes from God's strong anger. This wine is like the strongest kind you can get, with no water added and extra spices to make it even stronger. God is clearly very angry with those who accept the mark. The Bible talks about God's cup of wrath more than 13 times. Psalm 75:8. "For a cup is in the hand of the Lord, and the wine foams. It is well mixed, and he pours out of this. Certainly all the wicked of the earth must drain and drink its dregs." This is the idea behind the cup that Jesus wanted to avoid if it were possible. In contrast to Jesus, who voluntarily endured the wrath of the Father that was due to us, his enemies are compelled to drink from the cup. We read, "The wine of the wrath of God, the cup of his indignation." The wine in the cup symbolizes anger, or thymos, as it is known in ancient Greek. Indignation, from the ancient Greek word orge, meaning angry with a settled disposition, is related to the cup. The typical word for God's fury in the New Testament is orge, which comes from ancient Greek. Revelation contains 10 of the 11 instances of the ancient Greek word thymos. Rather than erupting in wrath, God's wrath against sinners is a constant and unwavering stance against wickedness and sin. However, in the book of Revelation, the term for passionate anger is used much more often. We read, "He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone." This shows that the pain in hell is real and extremely awful. It's both very painful and disgusting. The book of Revelation doesn't have any verses that match today's trend of avoiding the topic of hell. This verse reveals several important truths about hell and the forever fate of those who are lost. We also read, "The smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest, day or night." People who worship the Antichrist and get his mark will spend forever in hell. There, they will face endless anger and punishment. This shows us that eternal pain is real. When we say forever and ever, it really means forever and ever. In Greek, this phrase means into the ages of ages, which is the strongest way to say something lasts forever.